And the Grammy goes to Cowboy Carter, Beyoncé.
All right.
Beyoncé just pulled off the most satisfying revenge in music history. After being shut out by the country music industry, she returned with an album that not only dominated the charts, but forced country music to face its own history. And at the Grammys, she did what no one expected, winning both Best Country Album and Album of the Year. Throughout history, and to this day, Black artists have struggled for radio play, award recognition, and acceptance within country music's institutions. And Beyoncé was no exception. In 2016, when she performed at the Country Music Awards, the backlash was swift and ugly. And in 2024, her album Cowboy Carter was completely shut out of the CMAs, even though it topped the country charts. In this video, we'll break down how we got here. We'll start with the history of Black exclusion in country music, move to Beyoncé's own struggles for recognition in the genre, and finally analyze how the 2025 Grammys became a defining moment that made history. Beyoncé has spent her career mastering every genre she touches, from R&B to pop to dance music. But she lost Album of the Year 4 times at the Grammys, and country music was always the one space that rejected her. How did Beyoncé win both Best Country Album and Album of the Year at the Grammys? And what does this moment mean for both her career and Black artists in country music? Country music as we know it today was born from a fusion of musical traditions that developed in the American South. While it has become widely associated with white rural culture, its foundations were deeply influenced by Black musicians whose innovations shaped the genre's instrumentation, rhythm, and storytelling traditions. First was the banjo, a West African instrument that became essential to the genre after being adopted by white musicians in the 19th century. Second was the integration of African rhythmic and melodic structures, including polyrhythms and call and response patterns, which influenced artists from the Carter family to Johnny Cash. Third was the storytelling tradition, with themes of hardship and resilience rooted in African American oral traditions. But as country music transitioned from an informal folk tradition to a commercially viable genre in the 1920s and 1930s, the music industry intentionally segregated Black and white artists. This was largely driven by record labels, radio stations, and major institutions that sought to market country music exclusively to white audiences. As a result, one of the most significant decisions that shaped the genre's racial divide was the creation of separate marketing categories: hillbilly music for white artists and race records for Black artists. Radio further reinforced this segregation. From the 1940s onwards, the Grand Ole Opry, which became the most influential institution in country music, largely excluded Black performers. As the Opry's reach expanded across the country, it cemented the idea of country music as a white genre. Meanwhile, white artists who had been directly influenced by Black musicians, such as Hank Williams, whose mentor was a Black street performer named Rufus T. Tot Payne, became country legends, while their Black counterparts were erased from the genre's history. The result was a genre that by the mid-20th century had become almost entirely associated with white rural culture, despite its deeply mixed origins. Black artists' exclusion from country music continued throughout the century, despite some progress. Charlie Pride, the genre's most successful Black artist, achieved several firsts, becoming the first Black singer to perform at the Grand Ole Opry, winning CMA Entertainer of the Year in 1971, and co-hosting the CMA Awards in 1975. Yet the industry treated him as an exception, rather than proof of Black artists' rightful place in country music. After his breakthrough, it took almost 4 decades until Darius Rucker won a CMA when he received New Artist of the Year in 2009. Even in recent years, country music institutions have been slow to acknowledge Black artists. Tracy Chapman made history in 2023 as the first Black woman to win a CMA award and the first Black songwriter to win Song of the Year. But the award came 35 years after she originally released Fast Car in 1988, following a country cover by Luke Combs. Her late recognition is emblematic of how Black artists are often only accepted in country music when their work is validated through white artists. Back in 2019, the industry's resistance to Black artists was already apparent when Lil Nas X's song Old Town Road went viral. The The song, which blended country and hip-hop elements, initially climbed the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. But Billboard controversially removed the song from the country charts, arguing that it didn't embrace enough elements of today's country music. This decision was widely criticized, as many pointed out that white country artists had incorporated influences from other genres without being excluded. The controversy exposed the double standards within the industry, where black artists face stricter genre policing than their white counterparts. Even in the 21st century, country music continues to be a highly policed cultural space, where black artists face barriers at every level. By 2022, black artists received just 1.5% of country radio play, and only 3 black musicians had been inducted into the Grand Ole Opry since 1925. Beyoncé's relationship with country music is deeply tied to her Southern heritage. Born in Houston, Texas, to a mother from Louisiana and a father from Alabama, Beyoncé grew up immersed in the rich musical traditions of the Black South. Even in her Destiny's Child era, Beyoncé's country influences subtly appeared. The group frequently embraced cowboy hats and rodeo-inspired fashion, particularly during performances in Houston. And they performed multiple times at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, one of the largest rodeo events in the world. Her first direct attempt at engaging with country music came with Daddy Lessons from Lemonade in 2016. But when Beyoncé performed the song at the Country Music Awards alongside the Dixie Chicks, now known as the Chicks, the backlash was immediate and intense. Despite being the highest-rated 15 minutes of the entire broadcast, the performance was met with a flood of racist vitriol online. Critics questioned her country authenticity, with some openly rejecting the idea that a black woman could claim space within the genre.
Beyoncé did a self-serving song. I didn't see what it added to the show. I thought it was just ridiculous. Daddy Lessons from her own album? Forget it. I hated it.
The controversy was further fueled by Beyoncé's support for Black Lives Matter, with detractors using her activism as a reason to discredit her presence in country music.
And I thought it was really outrageous that she used it as a platform to attack police officers who are the people who protect her.
So Beyoncé now has been relegated to shaking her boobs, shaking her ass, and racial commentary. That's basically what her stunt is now.
Your husband was a drug dealer. For 14 years, he sold crack cocaine. Talk about protecting black neighborhoods. Start at home. Those are my final thoughts. Thanks for watching. God bless you. God bless America. And take care.
Beyond audience hostility, Beyoncé faced institutional rejection. When she submitted Daddy Lessons for consideration in the country categories at the Grammys, the country committee refused to recognize it as a country song. This decision was widely criticized, particularly given that pop-leaning tracks by white artists, such as Maren Morris's Hero, were accepted into the same categories. The exclusion of Daddy Lessons from country categories highlighted the double standard black artists face when engaging with the genre. Despite this resistance, Beyoncé didn't give up on her country ambitions. Instead, the backlash to Daddy Lessons laid the groundwork for her return to the genre almost a decade later, this time on her own terms, with an album that would force country music to reckon with its past and its future. Beyoncé's Cowboy Carter is a seismic album that transcends musical boundaries, reclaims erased histories, and challenges systemic exclusion in the country genre. The rejection she faced at the CMA Awards started a 5-year odyssey of research into country music's black origins, as Beyoncé sought, in her own words, to redefine the canon. She collaborated with scholars like Alice Randall, the first black woman to write a #1 country hit, and musicians like Rhiannon Giddens, a banjo historian. She excavated buried narratives from the banjo's West African roots to the erased legacies of pioneers like DeFord Bailey and Leslie Riddle. The album's sonic architecture can be conceived as a gumbo of ancestral and modern techniques. Fiddles, washboards, and steel guitars intersect with trap beats and operatic vocals. By reworking the sonic and thematic boundaries of country music, Cowboy Carter works as both an act of rebellion and a love letter to country that challenges the genre's gatekeeping while celebrating the black artistry that shaped it. The title Cowboy Carter references both the Carter family, who borrowed from black musician Leslie Riddle, and Beyoncé's married name, making it both personal and historical. Her album cover, featuring her on a white horse with the American flag, pays homage to Houston's Black Rodeo Queens, a tradition that emerged after the Civil War. Cowboy Carter's rollout was a masterclass in cultural marketing. A Super Bowl Verizon ad teased the album, followed by guerrilla campaigns in Houston and Nashville featuring rodeo-inspired murals. The strategy worked. Texas Hold'em made Beyoncé the first Black woman to top Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart. By April 2024, it had surpassed 1 billion streams. But despite all this momentum, Beyoncé's road to the 2025 Grammys was marked by blatant industry rejection. In September 2024, the Country Music Association snubbed Beyoncé entirely at the Country Music Awards and did not nominate Cowboy Carter in any category. The snub was particularly glaring given that country radio and Nashville institutions had embraced Cowboy Carter's collaborators like Shaboozey and even Post Malone, who received nominations while Beyoncé was completely shut out. Luke Bryan, one of country's biggest stars, attempted to justify the snub by suggesting Beyoncé hadn't come into their world enough.
You know, if you're gonna make country albums, come into our world and be country with us a little bit. Like Beyonce can do exactly what she wants to. But come to an award show and high five us and have fun and get in the family too. And I'm not saying she didn't do that. I didn't know. I didn't never see,
I understand.
The snub reignited debates about who gets to be considered a real country artist and whether the industry was willing to embrace the genre's Black roots. As country's biggest institutions shut her out, the focus turned to the Grammys. Beyoncé's 11 Grammy nominations for Cowboy Carter, including Album of the Year and Best Country Album, made her the most nominated artist in Grammy history, bringing her career total to 99 nominations. Would the Recording Academy follow the CMA's lead and shut her out? Or would they embrace her groundbreaking work? When the 2025 Grammy Awards finally arrived, Beyoncé's moment of reckoning with the music industry played out in real time. Her first win of the night came as a shock to many, Best Country Album for Cowboy Carter. She seemed genuinely shocked that she had won in a genre that had fought so hard to exclude her. The moment became an instant meme, but her acceptance speech made clear just how much the award meant to her.
I think sometimes genre is a cold word to keep us in our place as artists, and I just want to encourage people to do what they're passionate about.
The win was unprecedented. Beyoncé became the first Black woman in Grammy history to win Best Country Album. But the night wasn't over. In the show's biggest moment, Beyoncé took home Album of the Year, making her the first Black woman to win the award in over 2 decades. The Academy had a long history of awarding Beyoncé in smaller categories while denying her Album of the Year.
I don't want to embarrass this young lady, but she has more Grammys than everyone and never won Album of the Year. So even by your own metrics, that doesn't work.
With Cowboy Carter, the Recording Academy corrected a historic oversight, not just for Beyoncé, but for Black artists who had been excluded from country music for generations. But while the artistic merits of the album clearly played a role, Beyoncé's victory wasn't just about the music. Her win was probably the result of a confluence of industry politics, Grammy voting shifts, cultural narratives, and strategic career decisions that all aligned to make this the moment when the Recording Academy finally recognized her with its top prize. One of the most significant factors in Beyoncé's win was her genre shift. After multiple Album of the Year losses, Beyoncé finally won, but it took making a country album to do it. Historically, the Grammys have demonstrated a clear preference for certain genres in the Album of the Year category. While hip-hop, R&B, and dance albums dominate the industry in terms of commercial impact and cultural influence, they've rarely won Album of the Year. The Grammys tend to favor pop, rock, and folk music, which are perceived as more in line with the Academy's idea of musical excellence. Beyoncé had already lost Album of the Year with Lemonade in 2017 and Renaissance in 2023. By shifting to country, a Grammy-friendly genre, Beyoncé may have created an album that was more palatable to voters who historically resisted her past work. But beyond the genre shift, the album was also a conceptual and historical statement. Unlike a straightforward pop country album, Cowboy Carter was a deeply researched project that reclaimed country music's Black roots. It positioned Beyoncé not just as a genre hopper, but as an artist reshaping the conversation about country music's history and ownership. This kind of artistic ambition aligns with the type of albums the Grammys typically reward, particularly in recent years, where there has been a shift toward honoring culturally significant, genre-expanding works. Albums like Casey Musgrave's Golden Hour and Jon Batiste's We Are demonstrated that Grammy voters favored projects that challenged and redefined genre boundaries while maintaining accessibility. Beyoncé's approach to country, which is both reverent and disruptive, positioned Cowboy Carter as a strong contender for Grammy recognition. Beyond the genre shift, another major factor in Beyoncé's win was the Grammys' need for redemption. For years, the Recording Academy has faced accusations of systemic bias against Black artists, particularly in the major categories. While Beyoncé holds the record for most Grammy wins with 35 awards, the fact that she had never won Album of the Year had become an embarrassment for the institution. The Grammy Awards had been attempting to repair its reputation in recent years, including expanding its voting membership to be more diverse. By awarding not only Beyoncé, but also Kendrick Lamar this year, the Academy made a statement about its willingness to evolve and address past mistakes. The demographics of Grammy voters have also shifted, which likely contributed to Beyoncé's success. As of 2025, 40% of Grammy voters were people of color, and 37% were under the age of 40. This new generation of voters is more inclined to embrace genre-blending albums, progressive storytelling, and artists who challenge the status quo. Had this vote happened a decade ago, Beyoncé may have faced the same barriers that kept her from winning before. But in 2025, the combination of a changing voter base and a powerful Grammy campaign probably helped push Cowboy Carter over the edge. In the end, Beyoncé's victory was not just about one album. It was about everything that led up to this moment. It was about her career-long battle with Grammy recognition, her strategic move into a more Grammy-friendly genre, the cultural and industry-wide reckoning with race in country music, and a Recording Academy eager to correct past wrongs. Perhaps most importantly, Beyoncé's win proved that country music can no longer ignore the Black artists who helped create it. By winning both Album of the Year and Best Country Album, she didn't just break barriers, she forced an entire industry to acknowledge its own history. Beyoncé's Grammy wins prove how misunderstood artists can be when they challenge genre expectations. But she's not the only one facing this issue. Right now, another artist is making waves globally, but many listeners are struggling to understand her culture. Check out this next video to discover why we misunderstand Tyla and how she's redefining global pop on her own terms.